Right.
Well, I want to talk. I want to get to Bash Bash Revolution a bit, which is such an amazing book because it actually got me to read a sci-fi book, which is a mind-blowing accomplishment. But do you have what is the part? I was actually talking with a friend of mine about this the other day, and he's more like he's in more in that kind of tech world, and and there's a lot of resonance in this stuff, and I think that this is almost like it's better to think of this stuff as this isn't a real intellectual movement; it's a lifestyle brand for a particular type of I think a particular kind of brand identity, and obviously, like in Jordan Peterson's case, self-help. But there's a part that just feels so like I did the opening segment on the show on this the massive fallout of this it can't be underscored enough, the just utter disaster of the Iran pullout. Of course, all of the usual biggies that at this point we just sort of note in a numbed way, but really are the systemic crisis of climate, of global warming. Ben Carson wants to take an axe to public housing in a way that will obviously viciously harm so many people. Net neutrality, ironically, in the context of all of this internet enabled stuff. That's Ed Markey has a bill in the Senate right now to try to protect it from the Republican FCC's decision. So everything from macro to micro, we just have so many actual real things to deal with other than these sort of like peddlers of mediocre ideas and empowerment of sort of reactionary politics. There's a part, and I'm going to get a little Alex Jones here, but it just feels like this is all, it's all coded. They're flooding the zone with nonsense so that, like, instead of having a half an hour conversation where Doug Lain and I actually talk about real things that need to be addressed, we're talking about these morons. But they're getting New York Times profiles, and they're taking an unbelievable amount of oxygen with ideas that it's like. And I think there's another thing that their followers and the kind of cults don't understand. The ideas have been addressed. The bell curve has been critiqued. Horrible foreign policy ideas have been critiqued. Scientism and positivism have been critiqued for centuries. And even the other stuff, it's like, yeah, great. Clean your room. Eat a high protein breakfast. Take a run. I'm a big fan. Believe it or not, my apartment is very tidy. Great.
I believe it.
Yeah. So
not so much my house, but I believe it.
Bucko. But so where's the part? I don't know. I don't even know how to phrase this as a question, but it just seems so like this is like almost it's a very sad and not fun. There's no like it's not a party. It's not like great pop culture, but this is it's basically just like a bread and circus show that's distracting us from real shit we got to get on top of, but at the same time also opening a door to even more damaging things. I don't know. It's very frustrating. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. Okay, so I want to say one thing, and I'm just using this as a way to plug, but while it's true that the New York Times ran a piece on the intellectual dark web and gave them a boost, they also ran a few days earlier a birthday greeting to Karl Marx that one of our authors of several books wrote, the author of Marx Returns, Jason Barker, and it made Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck and James Wood tweet like crazy at the New York Times about how dare they try to bring this outmoded, backwards, mass murdering ideologist to the New York Times.
Right.
So I don't know. I think the idea that the capitalist media will just put anything out there if it might get some clicks is maybe true. The other thing is,
The Economist just ran a piece on how like it was something to the effect, and of course they did their usual bob and weave, but the broad point was that Marx is surprisingly relevant to understanding today's capitalism. So even in The Economist.
Right. No.
Yep.
Yeah. And no, I think that people should really read, like, forget about Bash Bash Revolution. No, don't. But really read Capital Volume 1. But the the point that you're making is there a conspiracy of, I mean, you're not really asking.
Not
What you're asking is why,
not consciously, but just that dynamic when it's like, it couldn't be more urgent to deal with real things than ever. And yet, like, this just sort of peak middle brow bullshit is so front and center to the agenda that actually, if we did ignore it, it would be like the same way that I basically tried to ignore like Gamergate several years ago. Like, whatever, I don't want to talk about this shit. There's things going on in Yemen. And now, and now those guys like run the Republican Party.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think what it is that when you are up against a really difficult problem, people who sound confident and say things that you already think are going to be appealing, and they get to say the big plus for them is they get to say things that some people already think but are afraid to say, like,
right.
Maybe black people have low IQs or something like that.
Right.
And so that's why they're appealing in a way. And I really think what it is answers, even wrong answers, are better than just questions that leave you anxious, that you don't have an answer to.
Right.
That's how people are kind of constitutionally. They want closure all the time. And these people offer a kind of closure and a way to identify. I mean,
yep.
That's like, it's fun to think that you're as cool as Ben Shapiro, I guess.
I guess. That's a whole other very disturbing thing to me. Like, when did that become cool? Jesus.
I know. Well, maybe we're overestimating this.
Right.
The New York Times is not really setting the agenda for the youth of today.
That is totally true. But I mean, some of these guys are definitely, if it wasn't reflected back in a lot of online interactions and even just sort of questions that I got, I wouldn't take it nearly as seriously. And so, like, I know, as an example, I know that Alex Jones, I mean, it's important to keep an eye on him, and it's incredibly entertaining. And actually, unlike all these other people, he's actually a genuine broadcast talent. I mean, Alex Jones leaves, Dave Rubin. I mean, the only one of the guys in the whole article who has any sort of like just basic talent is Rogan. Everybody else, oh my God. But I know that Alex Jones, like, I know that there's nobody who's watching me and then also going to say, like, hey, Michael, I'm a fan of both yours and Alex, and I know you don't see eye to eye, but I'd really like your thoughts on Brain Force or whatever, right? But
on gay frogs.
Yeah, on gay frogs, or exactly, or like the conspiracy. Obama wants kids to sleep with, to have sex with cars or something, right? Like, that's not going to happen. But these guys, they pop up, and frankly, I honestly find it, I don't think any of it's particularly more intellectually enriching or rigorous or relevant than particularly anything that's coming out of Alex Jones's mouth, to be honest. I mean, I get it's not as absurd, but it's certainly not. But at any rate, how does this interface with Bash Bash Revolution, your new novel?
Well, okay, so I guess the only thing that I would say that interfaces with this is that my novel, along with other things, is a critique of what I'll call instrumental reason.
Yeah.
The main character's dad is one of these kind of techno-utopian, scientistic thinkers who kind of conceives of life as being a race between human intelligence and human stupidity, and who just fails to notice how the human stupidity and intelligence are always intertwined.
Right.
So his goal, I mean, Trump is elected in the book, and there's a threat of a nuclear confrontation, nuclear war, and his goal is to get the AI to help him save humanity, basically. And his way of doing it is to perfect everyone, to through scientific means and AI enhancement, make everyone the best version of themselves that they can be. But what he discovers is that only escalates conflict, that only escalates the crisis. When people are smarter and faster and more intelligent and healthier, they just do the same things more efficiently. And so something has to change on a different level, not on the level of perfecting biology or retooling what is. We have to create something new, and that's kind of a major point and theme in the book is that the AI enhancement just isn't really working. And every time he gets better at juggling, we don't get any closer to escaping our doom, or to utopia.
Right.
They're the same thing.
And of course, I mean, that's obviously, that's definitely the sort of Sam Harris scientism angle. Peterson has a scientism, but he's also trying to reinforce a kind of very reactionary mysticism. That actually leads me to the last question. We've talked about this. One of the things that's so bizarre specifically about Peterson is that he has Shapiro is basically just a far right, typical far right conservative who thinks Trump's a little uncouth and, is totally racist towards Arabs and has the same just kind of, deregulate social reactionary policies, blah, blah, blah. And then, Dave Rubin's just kind of an airhead who nods along. And Sam Harris is a scientist, is of scientism, and it's sort of bad foreign policy with positivism and a trust fund and zero self-introspection. Peterson is very weird because it's a fusion of, he's very, very socially reactionary, but he's also trying to make a case for naturalizing capitalism, which in both, capitalism in both very good ways from a perspective of social progress and also in very negative ways, is never going to allow in the long term for the types of social stratification and traditional gender norms that he pines for. So he really has a contradictory viewpoint, and that maybe that's for the next novel.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that Peterson, the way he's self-contradictory is interesting, and that's actually probably one of the reasons he's so appealing, is because he does offer people some things to think about that aren't just, clearly talking points for some part of the Republican Party.
Right.
Joseph Campbell was a very big pop phenomena and was of interest to lots of people. And his lectures are still probably being watched by a certain subculture today. And all of that power of myth and what is human nature and what is the human imagination made of? Is there, are there categories that are universal to the human imagination? Can we see them across cultures? All of that is interesting. I am not aligned with Jung at all, and I think Joseph Campbell's work is, but I still think it's interesting, right?
Right.
So that is one of the things that Peterson has going for him. The problem is that he wants to ground our identity and basically our ancestry, evolutionary ancestry, but also I think cultural, and that could very well bleed into our racial ancestry as well. I mean, there's aspects of Jungian thought that can align with really reactionary, fascist, racialist thinking.
Yes.
And so that's the fact that he's interesting is actually one of the things that makes him sort of more dangerous.
I will slap you happily.
He likes, he's a monster.
Yes.
Right? That's what one of his big talking points is: be a monster, but hold it in check.
Jesus Christ. It's so nice that all of these incredibly emotionally healthy people are exerting such a big influence on culture. Maybe it's like Sam Harris needs therapy, Jordan Peterson needed to do less therapy, and I don't know, Ben Shapiro needed to lose his virginity at an appropriate age. I don't know, and Dave Rubin was just hopeless. I don't know. Hopefully,
let's not go there. Let's not go into the virginity thing. Oh my God.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh, well, I'm talking very specific. Something needed to happen for Ben Shapiro. I don't know what. But my God, not even a hand job on Birthright. Okay. Douglas Lain. He's the author of Bash Bash Revolution. He is the publisher of Zero Books and host of the Zero Books podcast. Very, very good podcast and YouTube content and everything else. Douglas, appreciate your time as always.
Hey, thanks for having me on.